Welcome to another episode of You're Not Depressed, Just Unfinished. Today's episode is about listening to depression. What if depression wasn't here to torment us? What if depression was an ailment, a painful condition that our work is to just yank it away from our life? The work is actually depression has information, and there's wisdom and there's science to it. My guest today is Dr. Lara Honos-Webb. She's an expert in this area that she has spent decades understanding depression, and she brings the single message for our listeners today that depression, regardless how badly it hurts, it also teaches us something. We just need to learn how to listen to it. Once we do that, there's wisdom when we can revert back to health in a more thoughtful and methodical way. I'm very excited to have this conversation with Lara and make sure she gets to meet all of you in this discussion. She has a very long list of accomplishments. I want to make sure I do justice to her accomplishments. That she's a clinical psychologist in Northern California. She's the author of 7 books. I've written 1 book, and I know what goes into writing 7 books. Listening to depression, I want to make sure camera sees this, and The Gift of ADHD. Amazing books. Take a look at them. And Listening to Depression was named as one of the best therapy books in 2006 by the Health magazine. She's a longtime contributor to the Psychology Today on the topic of depression and ADHD and health. And her tagline, if you want to think about Lara, 2 statements: that depression is a wake-up call and ADHD is a gift. So let's welcome Lara. And Lara, share with us, where are you joining us today right now?
Yeah, I live in the Bay Area, and I'm in the East Bay in Walnut Creek. And this is where I have my office, and it's where I live.
Wonderful, wonderful. Before we go, there are 2 disclaimers. The session today, we talk about depression, about treatment, and the symptoms and signs of depression. This is not a therapy session. We are not offering treatment recommendations. We will talk about those topics. Please do not make any changes to your treatment, to your medication. And if any topics interest you, talk to your doctor, to your therapist first. But this is about information sharing, the latest science. Please stay with your treatment regimen. And Laura, you also have a disclaimer you'd like to share.
Yeah, I don't believe that depression has one cause. So I want you to see this as an additional approach to add to your treatments. And it can also be caused by biology or trauma, grief, or medical conditions.
Yes.
So there's many different causes for depression, but this is one approach that is easy to apply. And so it gives you a sense of how do you make meaning out of something of depression. And depression can be made harder the more that you feel that you've done something wrong or there's something wrong with you. And so there's not one cause, and being able to find the meaning in the depression. And so that finding the meaning, as I think about, from resignation to realignment, that just feel hopelessness. And so everything we're going to be talking about is going to help you to feel less hopeless, have more strategies for addressing your depression. And sometimes it's about translating a message that it's trying to communicate to you, which could be things like, I'm off track in this way. I need to make some changes. There's a lot of things not working in my life, and I have to be honest about what those problems are. And I also worked in addictions. And so finding meaning, finding purpose in it can actually be protective against finding addictions to make the depression go away.
Yeah.
And so those bad habits can escalate the depression itself.
Yes. This is very helpful. And unfortunately, we have a binary approach to depression. You get depression, it has symptoms, make the symptoms go away. What you're mentioning, that depression has a wisdom. There's in the whole lot of your talk, listen to depression, that there's a, if you listen, there are messages we can discern. My book, when it came out and became Amazon bestseller, You're Not Depressed, You're Unfinished. I want to ask you a question. So when my book came out, I got a call, email directly from a senior leader, female, I'm sorry, a female leader in Midwest, and she wrote and says, Ardashir, your book you're writing, I find them insulting. That I'm depressed, I'm hurting. Your title, your book is comes across as dismissive. That so it was a very important conversation, and I'm so happy she brought it up. And I have a sense that you hear this as well. That if somebody says, Laura, I'm struggling with depression, what is all these things about depression is listen to depression. I'm hurting. How would you respond to that individual?
I think I would say that there are things. So, for example, so many of us feel like we have to seek approval. We want people to appreciate us. And so this whole idea is, and this also, we get these messages from our families, from our culture, that we have to find the best success, that achievement is what matters. And sometimes we take out the meaningfulness of it. Am I on the right track? It can be almost like a check-in with that depression, and being able to say, okay, where is the root source of this? And
Root source of this, yes.
And I'm not saying it's easy. I don't want anyone to get that message. I would actually think of making meaning out of your depression is a hero's journey. And
Yes.
what I mean by that is you're doing something really hard. It's not a hero by definition is doing something that takes bravery and courage, and it can find making meaning out of our life too.
That's right.
Sometimes I think I'm depressed because this happened, but being able to find an underlying kind of new direction for yourself. For example, it could be something as simple as fun. It seems like such a small, short word, but giving yourself permission to have fun in your life.
That's right.
Or being in a bad relationship, what kind of that can create depression. And that could be a time for realignment, for finding ways to address the real problems. And that can be challenging as well. But it's a message. And if you never went to check your mailbox.
That's right. This is so important. Yeah. I love it what you said. And so with that individual mentioned, we ended up meeting. I invited her to have a conversation, and then she became a client. And exactly just what you mentioned, that I mentioned that I empathize being with depression because I grew up in a family, my mom and dad were severely depressed. I learned this later on in life when I became a psychologist, that they were struggling. And I didn't realize I was depressed myself. Over the years, over 25 years, I went to 7 different psychologists. I was a good patient, showed up for all the appointments. I took my medication, but things were not shifting. All I was learning was symptom management. Have more energy, less fogginess, have more hope, but I was not getting better. Well, the depression would come again. So what you just said, Lara, that depression can be cause and also can be the outcome. That individual said that when I mentioned that I'm depressed, it happened to me. And gently I mentioned, no, depression usually is outcome of something else. Trauma, life situations, not having some basic connections, like you having a good relationship, working in a soulless job, feeling that nobody understands or respects you. In those conditions, we become depressed because depression shows up as deprivation. So instead of seeing depression as a immovable condition, you're suggesting depression can be listened to and be understood. So on that one, let's say somebody shows up down the street or the client says, Lara, depression sucks. How do I listen to it? How, how do you respond to that?
I think of depression as a communication to yourself, from yourself, about yourself. And it's almost like
I want to write this down. Communication, this again, to yourself, about yourself.
to yourself, from yourself, about yourself.
I love that. To yourself, from yourself to your about yourself. Good, good.
Yeah, it's like when you know something's not working, and it would be like saying, like, what is missing here is what the communication is. What something's not working. And is it because you're so busy seeking approval that you don't understand who you are and what your own personal needs are? And sometimes, like I remember one of the people that I talked about in the book was none of the people I'm talking about were actual clients of mine. These were people that in my research I was looking at research subjects who were going through a depression clinical trial, and I got the transcripts from them. And it was some of my research that I was doing. And what they found was that the depression was helping them to do something very different. And this was a person who was had a difficult time with social relationships.
Yeah.
And because she was suspicious of people. And over the course of that treatment, she began to really realize I need friendships. I need people in my life. And the depression was preventing her from being able to connect with people. And in that case, it was like the whole process of the realignment that the depression, okay, it's worth it for me to step outside of my comfort zone. This is another big thing about depression. Like, what are you not doing that you know you need to do? And I'm not saying it's easy. Maybe it was like anxiety. It was her depression. She always thought, what ifs, all those negative what ifs. What if they don't like me? What if I feel like a fool? And in that process, though, she really began to almost like behavioral activation, like step out, make friends, make a commitment to that, and saying that this is important to me.
Yeah, this is good. You mentioned a number of important things that there's a misperception. Depression is about feeling better, feeling less dense, less helpless. You just mentioned a way out of depression actually respond to active verb of doing. Like beginning better relationship, about better alignment. And so instead of hoping, praying, medicating, substitution, medication, the social media, hoping one day you feel better, depression lifts when you actually do things. Create a better life. That's where you bring your agency in. It doesn't mean it needs to be something drastic and very big. Small actions of you take back your voice, your alignment, your choices, your dignity, and the love and affection, bringing this back. I like, Laura, also you mentioned that the experience of depression, there are shades to that. We have sadness, then feeling depressed. These two are relatively everyday experience in life. Then it becomes depression. That's more or less become the almost personality trait, a way of being that can go on, if not addressed, years. And then it's clinical depression. There's a term they use in this psychotherapy, treatment-resistant depression. It's the time depression almost become clinical. You need proper medication, proper.
Yeah.
How do you see that? How do you make that come alive for our listeners?
Yeah. I think, for example, I often will, to be really honest with you, a lot of the people that I do work with have already been on medication.
Yeah.
So medication does work, but it doesn't solve the problems. Now, what do I do differently? I'm feeling more energized. I'm feeling a little bit better. But then you need some tools for like, okay,
Yeah.
what am I going to do with my life? And so it can be even like one of the things I talk a lot about is the 4 Ps: presence, which means being in the present; pleasures. Sometimes
Mhm.
we have these, oh, buckle up,
Yeah.
but really giving yourself the permission for that pleasure, and also permission. What do I want to do?
Yeah. Yeah.
And for a lot of people who are in families, they feel like this, we can call it like codependency, trying to solve
Yeah.
everyone
Yeah.
else's problems and not turning inwards to yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And another thing is power. Like you have agency, you have
Yeah.
power. And that is going to mean stepping outside of your comfort zone.
Yes.
And that none of this is easy, but it's like it's another example of doing the thing that's going to help you. And
Yes.
you're a little bit nervous and not doing things that are terrifying to you. Like, I'm not going to jump out of a plane.
Yeah.
Uh, but things that are in your day-to-day life that you're not speaking about, not solving those problems. And like a simple question could be like, what are some things you're enthusiastic about?
Yes.
We want to manage the depression, but you also want to be able to build up these ideas of enthusiasm. And
Nice.
so that
Nice.
what is it that is and makes you enthusiastic, and think about those things. And because what happens is a lot of times people, let's say it's a career, and
Yeah.
they go into a career because they think that this is going to be a prestigious career and people are going to think highly of me.
Yes.
And at the same time, maybe they just want to open up a bakery shop. And
Yes. Yeah.
I know one of the people that I interviewed in my book, and then again, none of these are my clients, but I had interviewed them specifically.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she had won like a beauty pageant. And she
Hmm.
said as soon as her name was announced that she had won, she felt depressed. And she realized
Mm.
that this was all fake for her.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
wasn't who she was, it wasn't who she really was. And so she ended up becoming a spiritual coach. So think about that
Nice.
significant, it's a dramatic shift.
Yeah. Yeah. This is so interesting. One of the very frequent, I don't want to say always, the experiences that I see working with my clients, these are high achievers, professionals,
Mhm,
there's this next shining object syndrome. I want to get a raise. I want to get promoted. I
mhm,
want to become general manager, the
mhm,
different role. They achieve that. And just like your client you mentioned, they crash, saying that
mhm,
I didn't get it. It's not as meaningful. So in the world of work, they're fantastic. They are almost like thoroughbred horses going and crushing it, but they feel so empty. They use that term. I feel
mhm,
empty from outside. I have all the accolades and all the endorsement. So this brings back again your 4 Ps, that the permission principle, pleasure principle, presence principle, and power, that your healing, your growth, your energy is all inside. Outside, yes, we want to accomplish that, but really your growth, your mojo comes from here. Or do we have that? These 4 Ps, are they covered in your book?
yes.
Wonderful. I highly recommend that. And this shows about how do we get them. It's almost eat your veggies, like the basic things we need to do to be healthy.
Mhm,
Another topic that I'd like to get your perspective. The clients who I work with about depression, they talk about depression. At times it feels like waves. They come in, whether, so I work with some European clients. They saw the winter comes in, cold comes in. Depression can be triggered by weather, but talk about waves that come in and knocks me off my balance, and it lasts days, weeks, and months. And how do you see for somebody who see that waves of depression, which they feel it, but nobody sees it? How do you help the individuals?
Yeah, I think that's where also power comes in.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of someone that I interviewed for the book, and she had a child with autism, and her husband divorced her because he couldn't handle it. And
Yeah.
she felt, I have no idea how to do this by myself. And then so she empowered herself, and she found, if I take this step, and she took the next step, and she came back with this, I can handle this.
Yeah.
I can
I
do
can
this.
handle this. Yes.
Mhm.
I love that. Go ahead. I want to make sure, Zach.
Yeah, and it's not a miracle story.
Yeah.
It was a rough road, but building that confidence, and every step she took, she's like, "Okay, I'm getting the resources I need for my child. Okay, this is
Yeah.
working." And she built up some of that confidence and her sense of power.
Yeah. This is interesting, Laura. You mentioned when you ask people who they are not in the clinical state of depression, the terms they use, ask them, so how does it feel like? They use the variation of term, I feel empty. I feel powerless. I feel life. I'm watching my life like a train goes, and I have no control. And I just feel, can you join that train? They feel that I don't enjoy anything, drinks, sex, conversation. All I do, I'm like a robot. That's how they describe their depression. That's how it feels inside. What you just mentioned is tiny acts of start anywhere. I tell people that just wash dishes, go walk your dog, nap, something you feel you want, you do, you enjoy. Small things. The what how do you help people who just say that nothing works, nothing changes? What can you do?
Yeah, I think have them list down 10 things that they enjoy. And this is
Yeah.
where the pleasure principle comes in. Like,
Yeah.
what is it that you like? And out of those 10 things, it might be next week, I want you to pick one of those things and to go do it. It's so funny because we think about the history of psychoanalysis, but something like behavioral activation, actually stepping outside of your comfort zone. And I think that so much of depression is I'm fear of failure. I'm
Yes.
afraid. I'm afraid that I'm going to fail. I'm afraid that I can't do it. And so those are that kind of gets into CBT a little bit, where
Yeah,
you're
yeah, yeah.
distorted thoughts. Like you've never
Cognitive behavior therapy. Yes. Yeah. This is so good. The you mentioned something earlier I want to go back to that when we stay in the state of depression, that life is punishing. I have no voice, no choice, no pleasure. Our chemistry will change. It's almost like if you don't take your vitamin D, your calcium, your iron, you will, matter of weeks, you will see impact in your body. You can see worse skin, like you can see in your blood cells. So our body responds to how we feel. Good thing going to neuroplasticity, that when we start to feel better, we have more agency, more joy, more control, more sense of permission to do things. Chemistry, serotonin, they revert back. Our body is wonderful. We can get back to healthier state of being. So there, go ahead.
Yeah. One of the things that I was thinking about is my message isn't this is easy. That's not what the book is about. I think it's a hero's journey. And I
Yeah,
think people can think of recovering from depression as a hero's journey, and that might include having medical supports, clinical psychology supports, but it's recognizing that it takes some kind of courage
yeah,
and it can be small steps at first, but you're on that hero's journey, that
yeah,
things aren't working and there is a path. And you can legitimately think of yourself as a hero if you're
yeah,
making progress in limiting your depression and doing things that we're not doing before.
yeah,
And so you're really labeling yourself as a hero. And
yeah,
when you're depressed, it could be that being a hero means you go to the grocery store and you buy yourself some groceries or some healthy
yeah,
foods or maybe some favorite foods. And so you're stepping outside of that comfort zone little by little. And your life gets smaller and smaller the more your fear or maybe insecurity or maybe
yeah,
self-doubt
yeah,
is
yeah,
holding you back. And
yes,
that's where a strength-based approach can be helpful. What are your strengths?
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
when I work with clients, I often recommend they take this something called a Clifton,
Hmm.
and almost always when they get their strengths back, there's always one thing that they never saw in themselves. But
Yeah,
when they think about it, they realize, "Oh my gosh, I can do this. I have these strengths that no one has ever recognized in me."
yeah,
And
yes,
so finding those strengths can be very empowering because failure is a thing that can lead to depression.
yeah, yes.
Depression can lead to failure. So
That's
we
right.
need to
Feeds
break
each other.
like
Yeah,
exactly. We're both doing the same thing.
exactly, exactly. This is the powerful, Laura, what you mentioned, the hero's journey. It took me about 35 years to come out of my depression. Part of that, I was keep going to psychotherapy, trying to minimize the pain of depression, my
Mhm.
symptoms. When I learned, to your point, that depression is actually trying to tell me something, Artishi, get
Mhm.
up. You're living a life that is, it was professional life you don't enjoy. You've compromised your gifts. You talked about the strengths for making good money, getting promoted, smiling, but you compromise yourself. So my
Mhm.
spirit, my vitality, my power, I just deny them. I numb them. My depressions
Mhm.
came from there. A piece of data, in the US, for our international listeners, there's a Gallup organization, GAULLP, that every year they release number of surveys in political, social, environmental, and workforce. One of the key findings that is that in organization teams that they show low levels of engagement, they have higher rates of anxiety and depression in those teams. What it means is exactly what Laura is mentioning. When you work in a job that it's a good job, pays the bill, you have responsibilities, college, tuition, to medical house, so on. You're denying you. You're denying your those four P's that Laura mentioned. Depression comes in, goes to a sense of you're numbing yourself, you're depriving yourself, your vitality, your
Mhm.
agency, your liveliness. You put it for next day. Someday you will get to that. So you're paying the price.
Mhm.
Depression, it's really depression when it minimizes actually is annoying. Says that you're in a wrong job, in the wrong relationship. You're treating
Mhm.
yourself badly. Depression is actually, to Laura's point, that sometimes is the most honest voice in your life. The illness, most honest voice. Go ahead.
Yeah. I went to a high school where most of the people went into either being a lawyer or being a doctor. And
Yeah.
it was just because they were seeking those high profile jobs. And so these are the people that I grew up with. And many of them ended up being disenchanted and
Yeah.
that they chose the path that had those power positions, and that they ended up over time, like, leaving those jobs and being lost and then finding something new.
Yeah.
But, there's a lot of places where that's the goal isn't to find out who I am, what do I really need, what am I good at,
Yeah.
and but they just choose the things that are high powered.
That's right.
And so that they're high powered jobs, but they're maybe not empowering for that person.
High powered, not empowering. That's right. Knowing what
Mhm,
matters to you. This is so good. Laura, question, it just occurred to me. There are listeners, I'm sure they hear our conversation and says, great, you guys sold me. I want to go work with a therapist.
mhm.
What kind of a therapist should they be seeking work with? Because not every therapist practices the way you and I doing this work. Who should they be? How do they find this the right therapist for them?
I would I would recommend that they find someone who has, again, this idea that what is this communicating to you?
Yeah.
And here's an example from my own life. When I was an undergraduate, I decided I was going to take business classes because then I could graduate in 4 years, and that would be a career that I could make money and not have to be in school for so long, which I'm laughing at now because I spent a lot of time in school. And it was just the funniest thing because I went into a chemistry class and, okay, and I just realized I don't wanna do this, and then I went
Yeah.
into, like, a business class and started taking, and meanwhile, I had gone to the student counseling center to figure out why why am I feeling depressed? And it's such an interesting about the communication to yourself, from yourself, about yourself. So I was
Yeah.
reading self-help books when I was a kid, when I was a
Yeah.
teenager, and I knew that was what I wanted to do, but I just felt like I can't go to school for that long.
Yeah.
And through that therapy, I was like, it's worth it. Go for the thing that it's going to take a long time, but it is what you love. It's what you want to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
And so it was like that kind of experience where it impacted myself, of course.
Yeah. This is helpful. Laura, you mentioned hero's journey, that depression at times the invitation for you, dear listeners, to embark on your hero's journey. Hero's journey, we know it takes a long time. And if you
Mhm.
go to biblical or like a Luke Skywalker hero journey,
Mhm.
well, many years. What is the journey of depression being lifted, healing? How long it takes? Are there miles? The, what are your perspective on that?
I think because when I talk about when people are making their career choices, they're
Yeah,
making it around prestige and all of these things, but it's really about what do I love to do? And what
yeah,
am I actually good at?
yeah,
And what do I do naturally? What is the thing that people always say, God, it's so great how you can do that. And it could be asking other people, what do you think are some of my strengths? Or
yeah,
taking some kind of assessment about your strengths.
yeah,
And because when you're doing something that isn't your higher level interests and strengths, then it's hard to have that motivation and
yeah.
purpose. I think that's the thing, that's what feels purposeful to you.
Yes, yes,
And it has a purpose, and I think I'm good at it already, and it's instead of trying to build up a bunch of talents that are not really your strong points,
yeah, yeah.
that's a hard road to go down.
That's right. This is so helpful. You keep bringing about doing, purpose,
Mhm,
creating. The way that I share it with the clients and says, "Oh, so Artish here, I work with you. What is the game plan? Will I wake up one day and it's just exciting? I'm vibrant, feeling uh, very energetic." And I tell them, dear friend, actually, no, it's going to suck for a while. It's going to happen. As depression minimizes, your suppressing your emotions minimizes, and going to for peace, permission, pleasure, presence, and power come up, you will experience emotions that they were there for a long time. You didn't pay attention to them. You will feel a sense of grief, what you tolerated, the what you lost, you didn't quite couldn't say goodbye to. You may experience anger. Uh, how do you basically play a small role to be loved, to have power, to presence? And then you may realize you have some work to do to build skills. The way you mentioned about following your purpose. What are you good at? If you're not doing this job, what job you need to do? So you realize you have some restoration work to do. Wish it away is the work that is actually is divine. This is your work. And that's what that work makes you come alive, because the joy is less about reaching a destination, is what you're creating. So, but knowing there's a dip, that it just says, I didn't want this. Numbness was good. But here you're trading numbness for aliveness. And then you're building what is coming up, and that's journey. As people go ahead.
Yeah, I was thinking of another person that I interviewed in the book, and it was a man who had a wife that was very successful. And so he didn't need to work, and he was taking care of the children, and he was depressed. And he ended up, and we talk about, like, what is it that you love to do? And for him, it was he loved creating comics, but that doesn't seem
Mm,
like a job. And so he was just felt so worthless.
yeah,
And what ended up happening with him is his wife encouraged him, just make these comic books that you want to make.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so he began to do that. And he actually has several books on Amazon now. And when it seems like one of those things that making comic books, like,
Yeah.
oh, how are you going to make a living doing that? How are you going to? But it was, and it became a great source of success, and he was contributing to the world. And
Yeah.
that's the thing. What are you contributing to the world? People want to know, and it can be comic books, right?
That's
I mean,
right.
we think,
That's right.
again, going back to, you know, you don't have to be a lawyer or a doctor. You can do the
Yeah.
thing that you love, the thing that you're already good at, the thing that you do when you have nothing else to do.
Yeah. Yeah. This is beautiful. Laura, question I want to bring listeners back to your book again, Listen to Depression. When I wrote my book, I wrote it with mom and dad who they passed on. Mom, not understand going on for you. My dad understand what happened with you. And it wrote it for me, that all the anguish that I had, I couldn't figure it out. When you wrote your book, who was it for?
I think that's a great question. I think that in part, that was part of my journey, was when I figured
Mm,
out I can just see these two pathways, like me trying to do the thing that is prestigious versus me taking a path which I know is going to take a long time and is going
yeah.
to be a big part of my life. And I just kind of had that sense, oh, no, I have to get out into the workplace. But it was like really through that therapy part that I had a teacher, a professor when I was in college, who I was taking a psychology class with her, and she said to me, "You should go into this. You should be a psychologist." And I was like, "No," and I gave her all the reasons I couldn't do it. And I remember what she said to me. She said, "10 years from now, you're either gonna be a psychologist or you're not. And if you
Yeah.
start now, you'll get there." And that was one of those things that it was really one of those things that just woke me up, frankly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That I'm so happy you listened to your professor. So you and I
Mhm,
can have this conversation today.
mhm.
So for listeners who are hearing this conversation, what are few nuggets you would like to share with them?
I think what we get caught up in is patching up our weaknesses.
Yes.
And so is that really how you want to live your life? And so what I think that the message that's coming from that is that what are your strengths? What are you good at? What comes to you just as easily as falling off a log? And
Yeah.
that's the thing that is going to sustain you. And I know
Yes.
we're talking a lot about careers, but this is also true of relationships.
Yeah.
People may get into a relationship and be like, okay, I have to get married or I have to do this. And they, without necessarily realizing, is this right for me? Does this feel right? Is this when they feel like I have to check off all the boxes.
Yeah.
I have to get married. And so that it happens in relationships, it happens in the workplace, it happens in families, the expectations in families,
Yeah.
and what do they call that? Living the dream.
That's right. That's
And
right.
that dream may not be, what everyone else thinks is the American dream.
That's right. This is about bringing your truth. There's a statement by Maya Angelou about
Mm,
20 years ago, as I was coming out of my depression, finally finding what I needed to do. I needed to do my work. Um, and it's off the camera to my right, but every time I come to my office, I see it in big letters. And the statement is that there is no greater agony than burying an untold story inside you.
Oh,
The
wow.
untold story. 8 billion people, 8 billion stories. What
Mm,
Laura's talking about, what this session is all about, times depression is about coming back to your truth, the of ultimate reality in your life. When we live in our truth, we have work to do. There's a sweat, tears, failure, success, but it's
yes.
your story. Your
You
story.
That is such a great point because it doesn't mean that even if you're on the right path, that it's easy. And so that's where you wanna but if you're tapping into your enthusiasm, and I
Yes,
think enthusiasm means God in you, which
that's right.
means that you are living the life where your gifts match what you're doing in life, and that could be the person that's the mother that's taking care of the kids at home, and that's what there is meaning and purpose.
Yeah,
And so really being again, it's a hero's journey, and
that's right.
there's no really at least getting on that path, and it may take a
Yeah,
long time.
yeah,
And when I think sometimes if a person's really lost and they
yeah,
don't know exactly what their thing is,
yeah,
that it can be like that's like what I'm talking about, like with a hero's journey. No, this is a hero. It's not an
yeah,
easy thing to do. We don't
yeah,
wanna
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of be too glib about that.
Exactly. This is so important. One of the ways that I know it worked for me, and I share with clients who they say, where do I start? And I tell them,
Mhm,
depression responds to momentum,
mhm,
motion, to attention, to energy. Really doesn't matter what you do, as long as you're doing something and you enjoy doing it. I call
mhm.
that M&M for your soul. Do
What'd you
anything.
say?
Clean M&M, the chocolate M&M.
Yeah.
Anything that is exciting for you, anything that energizes you, just do it because that brings
Mhm,
vitality. That taps to what you mentioned, agency, to permission, to
mhm.
control.
Yeah,
Laura, where do people find you?
yeah. So I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area and in the East Bay, and I have an office here and meet with clients.
Wonderful. And all of your contact information is in the text, the information as part of podcast. And my suggestion is that for folks who are looking for a refreshing way of looking at depression, that as a way to, is less about managing depression, is about awakening,
Mhm.
claiming your life. That's what it is. Contact Laura. She's here. She's a therapist in full practice. Wonderful. So hope this was helpful. Please let us know about comments, questions, anything you want to know more. I loved working and getting to know Dr. Lara, and we will have other sessions coming up. This is such a rich topic. This is a life topic. Basically bird's eye view, but other future topics, like Lara is also expert in ADHD. There is a pattern that
Mhm.
many high achievers, they have higher score, they're high on depression, anxiety, and ADHD.
Yes, yeah.
In the business world, they crush it, and
Mhm.
then they go home and they crash themselves. So a number of my clients, they're they have that experience. So we will have other
Mhm.
discussion about this topic. Thank you for your attention. Hope this was helpful. We wish you well. Take care.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Ardashar.